Welcome to the Strategic Aesthetics Beyond the Physique podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Woodyard. Whether your goal is to dominate the stage or reach a healthy body composition, it comes down to a culmination of habits. Here we're going behind the scenes to uncover what these habits look like in real life. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Beyond the Physique podcast. Today we're talking about making space for your goals. I'm joined by Sabrina Didado. She's an entrepreneur, a yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher. She's a former client of mine with an awesome transformation, and she's continued that. She's currently developing a Patreon and a YouTube account that is yoga for bodybuilders and weightlifting. So thank you for being here, Sabrina.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course. So tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Akron, Mogador to be more specific. And I played volleyball all my life, volleyball and basketball.
Okay.
So I didn't get into yoga until high school. And I was playing volleyball, club, played all throughout high school. And I think it was my junior or senior year, my high school coach was like, hey guys, we're going to do yoga for training.
Yeah.
On top of strength, on top of our running and all other exercises that we did. At the time, I was like, why would I need to do yoga? This makes no sense. I already have so much on our plate.
Right.
And so we started yoga in the smelly wrestling room. And after a couple weeks, I noticed I was jumping higher. I wasn't as sore after practices or after games. And my endurance skyrocketed. It was crazy. And the most important thing was I started to become more calm. Yeah.
So do you think that it was like the calm part allowed you to be better in the gym because you were recovering better?
Yeah.
And then obviously like the physical too, like you're stretching more and definitely holding poses and stuff requires you to do things differently than lifting weights. Yeah.
So it also added a lot more patience to me as well. So even in the gym when we were working out, after games or on our off days we were training, and I could tell, wow, like I am much more present. I can feel what I'm working on instead of just going through the motions. And a really big thing too was I was recovering a lot better. I wasn't as sore. Yeah. Again, I could jump higher. That was the one thing I was like, oh my gosh, I could get so much higher on the net. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's cool. That's funny you mentioned like being able to feel your workouts, because like I say that like working out for me is like meditation in motion.
Yes.
Because like for me it's like whenever I'm say doing like a lat pull down, like I'm just focusing on squeezing all the fibers in my lat like on the way down, and like I'm really present with the the motion. That's why I get like super irritated when people like want to talk during my set. I'm like, I'm in my zone. Like I really am. Like I'm trying to feel every muscle fiber in my back, and then you apply that like total focus to something. I think that it applies to other things. Okay, so you obviously fell in love with yoga for yourself. So what inspired you to start giving that to others? What's inspired you to start teaching?
So, well, to reiterate, I've been practicing for about 10 years total. It was in 2013, 2014 was when I started. And it wasn't until I went to college, I had a couple yoga teachers, and I was thinking, wow, like you guys are so inspirational. And I have so much knowledge too. I would be taking what I learned in class back to my roommates, and I would be doing like mini breathwork sessions, mini meditation sessions, and they were all saying, Sabrina, you should do this. And I've always been spiritual and just kind of out there, I guess. And I was thinking, you know what a good way for me to preach almost is to be a teacher. Yeah,
definitely. Okay. That makes sense. So when people think about mobility, a lot of times they think of like, your bent over hamstring stretch or like your passive range of motion. So with yoga, it's about passive and active range of motion, if there's anything I know. Could you just explain the difference between those?
So, well, with yoga, there's different types of yoga too. And, you have your hot power yoga. And the type of yoga I teach is called yin yoga, Y-I-N. And we do mostly passive, but we do some active as well. So with passive stretching, you use outside force to kind of help you get into your range of motion, into your flexibility. So for example, I don't know if we have room to do this, but we can even just do a little example here. Place your foot above your ankle like this, or above your knee. Kind of see how I lifted my foot up and did that?
Yeah.
That's more passive, because you're actually helping you to get in that. While active, you would use your actual muscles to do it. Okay. Yeah. So you get fully into your range of motion, and you're not only just doing it for flexibility, you're doing it for total muscle engagement too, and the surrounding
and the stability in the joint.
Mm-hmm. So see how, like, when I did it, my core was tight, shoulders up. It's so you're using basically your entire body to help you move it. While before, you can just kind of go into it, and then stretch. You know,
right? I think that's why a lot of like weightlifters and bodybuilders don't look at stretching as like, it's not the top of the list, because they just look at it as like this passive thing. But then if you asked like the top 10 bodybuilders at the Olympia in any class to sit there and lift their leg the way you did, there wouldn't be functional.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think if we showed them a couple of those examples, they might be able to say, well, that's probably going to translate to my squat.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that was the number one thing that I probably saw when I really got into training as well, was my development of my squat. It was just night and day, especially when I started training with yin yoga. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But going back to active range of motion, I noticed that I could get deeper into my squat with less pain, because I've struggled with back pain all my life. Yeah. And it really helped working those muscles in my lower back, my sacrum, my SI joint, even my quads and my hamstrings and glutes, like everything together. I could tell I was sitting deeper. It was more comfortable. I had less pain. Yeah. And it is uncomfortable doing it at first, because a lot of people, that's why they don't want to do it, is because, well, I'm bad at it. Right. And it is uncomfortable. But after you push past that, then it starts to become more eye-opening and expanding. Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so as a yoga teacher, what are some common problem areas that you see with like, let's say our athletic people, so people that are like in the gym weightlifting, whether there's bodybuilding, powerlifting, what is like most neglected? So there's a couple answers I have. One of the things that you actually mentioned was not being focused entirely in their workout and entirely in it, I guess. You can just tell people. Man, that's a really good one. I was sitting here thinking, is it shoulders or hips or wrists? And you're thinking they're total focus. And boy, okay, that's awesome. Total focus, yeah. And just being in it in general. Because I know a lot of people, I don't know, like we live in a world of distraction and stimulus. So we have our phones right here. We have our music. We have our friends or someone attractive or what we're wearing. So we're not 100% in it. Yeah. And that's one thing I really see people struggling. That makes a lot of sense. I could totally agree with that. It's not something that maybe I noticed until you said it. Yeah. But boy, that was a big light bulb moment for me. That's one thing yoga really helps with, is just getting you into the moment, and just especially with your workouts. So you briefly described a couple different kinds of yoga. Can you give us some wave tops of the types? Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to ask you a question too to counteract that. What do you think of whenever you hear yoga? Like, what's your... most recently is hot yoga at Powerhouse, where it's actually Bikram yoga. Yep. So I'm familiar with that. Yeah. And then I've done vinyasa as well. Yeah. So typically whenever we think of yoga, we think of the more active poses, like your warriors and your hot yoga, which is all great. I love hot yoga, and I practice that all the time. But there's other types of yoga. So yoga in general is supposed to balance the body, the mind, the soul. So there's other things that we could do besides working out. And a lot of people think of yoga as working out. So I teach yin yoga, which is what I mentioned before. And that targets the fascia, which is something that we're probably going to talk about too. Heck yeah. So, and yin yoga, we hold poses for about 3 to 10 minutes. Depends on what pose we're holding and what target muscle we're stimulating, and we sit in that. So for example, we might be sitting in a pose like this for 5 minutes. Yeah. And that opens up a lot of things, not only with the muscles, but with our own selves, our comfortability, our mind. Her mind starts going. But yeah, there's yin yoga, there's vinyasa yoga, then you have your meditation, your breath work, and your restorative, which restorative, you basically just kind of chill there and lay and just let your body naturally
Would you say that's
unfold.
more of like a mindfulness type practice than the restorative? So you mentioned like a 3 to 5 minutes on those stretches. So I've looked into some studies and stuff, and for me, like the stretching aspect, I try to get people to hold things for pretty long periods of time. So you mentioned the fascia, but from my end, I've noticed it's like a nervous system thing.
Yes.
So like the muscle's not necessarily actually not long enough to do the stretch. It's the nervous system that's firing it. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, so the fascia and the nervous system are intertwined, literally. So the fascia has, I think it's over 250 million nerve endings, which is, our skin is obviously like the number one because we can feel the nerve endings on our skin. But the fascia is the second most abundant organ in our entire body.
Really?
So really what you're feeling when you're stretching, like any sort of stretch, is the fascia. So yeah, the nervous system and the fascia are literally intertwined. So that makes total sense.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to get to that one too. For sure. Okay, so you already kind of hit on it, but so outside of the physical advantages of like being looser and proper joint function, what would you say, like from a mindset perspective, that practicing yoga could apply to bodybuilding or like powerlifting or weightlifting in general?
Yeah, so like I said before, I think one of the main struggles with lifting in general is people aren't exactly in it.
Yeah.
So one thing about yoga, and especially mindfulness, that's a type of practice that I like to bring into, is mindfulness. Basically what mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment without judgment or bias. A lot of times we're lifting, we're like, okay, that hurts, or maybe that's uncomfortable, I want to stop. And I mean, generally when we're lifting, we want to be uncomfortable, or else we're not given that stimulus.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be in pain.
Right.
And a lot of people too, they push past that pain point. That's where injury can occur as well. So mindfulness not only helps us stay in it and stay focused, it can help prevent injuries. And that's a really big thing too, because I know a lot of people can just load on weight and then end up going on a squat and hurting their back, or really trying to lift something that they're just powering through and they can't.
They're really not actively squeezing the weight up. They're using momentum and stuff and jerking motions.
Yeah. Or they're just too preoccupied in their own mind. They can't actually feel the pain that's happening until after. And they're like, whoa, I hurt that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so yoga and mindfulness, that was my next question, was the injury prevention. So just being mindful in the workout, that would definitely prevent injury for sure. And obviously preparing the body from a nervous system and loose fascia and proper joint function, that's it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about mindfulness.
Yeah.
And what is mindfulness in your own words here?
So like I said, mindfulness is basically paying attention to the present moment without any judgment or bias. And I really put emphasis on without judgment or bias, because we have these biases in our head that we're like, oh crap, I'm uncomfortable, and we're not really paying attention or in it.
It seems really simple to say, but it's really hard in practice.
Exactly. It's so simple. So we could actually do like a little mindfulness.
Okay.
Like a little 1 minute mindfulness thing right now. So whenever I start, I like to focus on the body first, then the breath, then the mind. So just start to feel the sensations in your feet. Like actually bring your awareness to the sensations in your feet. And then work the way up. So notice the calves. Notice where your legs sit on the chair. Then notice your lower back. And then notice what your mind wants to do too. You're like, maybe you're thinking, oh wow, I'm hunched, or this hurts or something. So just notice again, like that non-biased part of you. Notice your belly. Notice where your breath comes into your belly. Notice your ribs, your upper back, your armpits, your arms. Then notice your hands, the sensations in your hands. And notice what you're looking at. That could be your screen or anything. And then we start to notice the breath. So just notice how you breathe in, where you feel it. Maybe take a deeper breath in.
Yeah, I'm chest breathing.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're chest breathing or belly breathing. Right now, we're just trying to be mindful. Then notice your thoughts. Notice what thoughts want to come up right now. And anyone watching or listening, you guys can do this right now too. Doesn't matter if you're driving. Notice what you see. Notice the colors. Notice all the sounds. Maybe the sounds outside. The sound of your breath. The sound of my voice. So this is mindfulness. This state. So this is where we want to attend to. Or kind of, this is where we want to go to when we're in the gym. Like, not necessarily like, oh, I hear the clinking of the weights, but like how we feel when we're in it. Yeah, we're present. It's exactly what it is. We are in the moment. Our mind's not in our way. Even though thoughts are still present and they're still occurring, we're not actively reacting to those thoughts. We're still having a podcast right now.
Right.
You're still driving or still listening. Like, we're active in the world, but we're not toned out.
Yeah, you're just more present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think right now more than ever we could use that.
For sure.
With all kinds of stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Shelby and I just talked a little bit about stress.
I saw that.
Like, we're basically cell phones now. Like, all of our downtime before, I mean, maybe 15 years ago, we would just be downtime present with the people around you. And now we struggle with that. Like, all of our downtime is spent on phone connecting and scrolling, and I'm generalizing,
Mm-hmm.
but like my wife and I, we've made some rules around it. Like, dinner time, no phones, like, and then after a certain time, like, we put our phones down. And then if it's an emergency, we'll communicate it. You know what I'm saying? Hey, this client had this. I really have to handle this. It'll be 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that's done, it's handled.
Yeah.
But it's a stressor that people don't think of when they're just looking and, like, subconsciously comparing themselves to all the shit that's going on in the world. And so I think that's something that people could definitely implement.
For sure. And the fact that you and your wife did that too, made those boundaries, is because you were mindful. You're like, well, I realize this, we're doing this, let's fix it too. That's one thing about mindfulness too. In the moment, we're not trying to fix anything, but when we're kind of done practicing, we're like, well, I don't like how that felt, maybe I'll work on my posture. Or like, wow, I don't like those thoughts, maybe I'll try to work on something so I don't think that anymore.
Right. Okay, so as an entrepreneur, your schedule can be tough, and the stress to perform is high. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance out and create time for your own mental health and mindfulness while trying to create a business, etc.? Yeah,
the number one thing is routine and consistency.
Okay.
That is the number one thing. Try to get into a routine. I try to get into a routine. And of course, it's not always perfect. It's like 75% perfect. And doing the same thing over and over again. Because I used to hate routine. I used to be like, oh.
Routine and repetition.
Yeah, I used to be like, oh, this is just taking away my freedom. I want the freedom to go do what I want. But then I was like, okay, I've never tried to have a routine before when I thought those thoughts. And I was like, let's just try it. Because you can't knock it until you try it.
But routine ultimately gives you freedom.
Yes. Until I did it, I was like, well, I feel more free. I'm not as stressed.
Yeah.
So, for example, like an average day, and this is about 5 days out of the week. Some days on Saturdays I do this. I wake up, go for a walk, eat my breakfast, take my vitamins, meditate. And I have like this morning routine that's perfect and I love it and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But it took me so long to get there.
Yeah. I'm working on developing my own morning routine right now. Basically the biggest part of my routine is don't touch my phone until I'm ready for the day. Because I will get distracted.
Yes.
I'll see all the problems that happened and I'll try to handle those before my teeth are even brushed.
Yeah.
I'll be like brushing my teeth trying to like text people back and then I'm stressed. And then it's my own fault.
And then you go throughout your day in that same state.
So, I've started putting the phone away and
Good.
having a little more. But so, like in a morning routine, what are some things that you would say is important to have in there?
Definitely some mindfulness practice. It doesn't have to be sitting and meditating for 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
But being present. And I think the amazing thing to do is to not be on your phone. So
Yeah.
whether you wake up with somebody, actually talk to them or hold them or something and just be mindful, or eating your breakfast, like actually noticing the colors on your plate, the feel of your fork, and like the taste of your food.
Yeah.
Or your water. Again, it doesn't have to be something grand, or just notice your morning shower. Just be more mindful.
Yeah.
Just notice more.
So I definitely think a lot of people think mindfulness meditation takes, 20, 30 minutes out of your day where you have to be completely quiet and people say that they're too busy and they don't have time. But you're kind of showing us that this is something that you can do while you're being productive.
Yes.
It's just a mindset shift. It's really not.
Actually something to add on. And one thing I learned in my teacher training was this is not something that you add on. You're actually taking stuff out of your life. So you're taking out your phone, you're scrolling, you're taking out all those multitasking things in your brain going on. Like you're kind of just stepping back instead of adding it on. So it's more passive in that sense.
Right.
And that takes a lot of stress off of us because we're like, cool, I really don't have to do anything. I just got to notice and be here.
Yeah.
So it's not like a reaching thing. It's more of a let's just be here. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so the fitness space just in general, it's pushed out there pretty hard. Like it's all about hard training. It's all about, no days off and no sleep, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, it is.
And there's not enough emphasis, in my opinion, on stress reduction and recovery. So, in your opinion, what are some things we can do to improve recovery and reduce our stress from day-to-day life?
Yeah, come to yoga. Come to class. Again, just taking time to come out of your own life, if that makes sense, or just to kind of just step back for a second. Again, even if it's 10 minutes of just, instead of scrolling on Instagram for 10 minutes, which I know you and I can easily do, and then we're like, whoa, 10 minutes goes by. Take that 10 minutes to just sit on the floor and maybe go through a couple active or passive stretches, and then kind of compare. And you're like, whoa, how would I feel after 10 minutes of Instagram versus that? So it's little things like that that can really make a difference in our recovery too. Because once we do things like that, we're like, whoa, I want to do more of it. So it's a snowball effect.
But you have to be mindful enough to start that.
Yes.
That's for sure.
So that's where conversations like this come in place.
There we go.
Hopefully spark that light bulb.
Yeah. Hope you guys are listening. Okay, so fascial adhesions, they are everywhere. Everyone hears about fascial adhesions.
Yes.
What are they?
So it's not exactly known exactly what they are, but from my understanding, they are little clusters of fascia that gets intertwined in your body. It could be intertwined to the actual muscle or a joint or just to each other. And just to kind of backtrack, fascia is a connective tissue, and it's basically like one big tissue that overlaps and encapsulates everything in your body. It holds everything together. If we didn't have fascia, we'd just be like a gloop on the floor right now. And it's also responsible for our movement and our fluidity too. So again, like we need the fascia to support, but also to move. So it's a really awkward, kind of weird organ or tissue, I guess. But adhesions is when those fascia bundles up. Like for example, when we get injured, say we have a shoulder injury and we don't go to PT or we don't move it, that inflammation and all of the stress from that can cause the fascia to bundle up, and that can cause pain, definitely will cause tightness. And I'm sure we all have tightness somewhere in our body. Like for me, I always have it in my shoulders and my traps. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be caused by injury. It could just be caused by mental stress as well. So a lot of times for stresses,
Yeah. So oftentimes, from what I've seen, a muscle that's tight it's basically like, I think of it as like radio static. right? So like your brain's firing out a signal to all your muscles playing a song, but like one muscle is just getting a little bit of extra signal, so it just doesn't let go all the way.
Yeah.
So like,
I love that. I've heard that. That's
yeah,
cool.
that's kind of like how I explain that. So like, typically those areas I would say like rolling out or like stretching, massage is my typical go-to for that. But it seems like using different forms of yoga, you could get that same.
Yes, I was just about to say, I'm going to use that example in my class tonight.
Yeah.
So yin yoga, really, again, yin yoga targets the fascia. And we hold these poses for 5 to 10 minutes. And it's typically worked on from the belly button down, but I like to go everywhere because a lot of people have problems in their shoulders and stuff. But
yeah.
So, for example, we'll be holding a pose. Again, go back to this example with the ankle over our knee, kind of sitting in this square gentleman's crisscross pose. If you're tight in your hips, over time and with the breath as well, and calming your nervous system, calming your breath, becoming mindful, this helps the fascia to eventually start to let go.
Okay.
Which can definitely ease pain and help recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what yin yoga is.
It's all about releasing it.
Yep.
Okay, so I've heard that we're breathing wrong about 100 different times, and I actually read a book called Breathe, and I didn't read it.
By James
I listened
Nestor?
to it. Yeah,
that's a good book.
Yeah, I didn't read it. I listened to it. It was and that was pretty cool. It kind of opened my eyes. So give me a little insight from your perspective on like the importance of breathing and like what proper breathing looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good book, by the way. That same book opened up my eyes too. It's a great book. So from a yogi perspective, there's so many different types of breathing. It's called pranayama in yoga, the yoga world, and prana means life force, which is your breath, your life force. So there's different types of pranayama in yoga. There's breath work to help stimulate and energize. There's breath work to help calm you down. Then there's breath work for your like everyday face-to-face reactions or interactions. So it depends on what you want to do. For example, I know the best thing to do is to breathe in and out of your nose. I know there's a lot of people nasal breathing. Nasal breathing. I know there's a lot of people doing the mouth tape when you work out or at night. You just get the most oxygen and the most breath. Like the most breath from breathing through your nose as well. Like we're not meant to breathe through our mouths. We're really not.
We're supposed to eat through our mouths. We're supposed to breathe through our nose.
Yes.
Yeah, that was basically the summary of that book.
Yeah.
That's what I got from it. It's just unhealthy for a lot of reasons to be mouth breathing, especially during nighttime when you're sleeping.
And it's a big snowball effect too, because I have really bad allergies. So I'm like, half the time I have to breathe through my mouth. But the reason why people have bad allergies is because we weren't properly taught how to nose breathe. So it's like, it's
something that I learned about was like your nasal erectors, and they actually get strengthened over time. And then like lack of using your nasal erectors will actually reduce their activeness.
Yeah,
so like,
their efficiency, so you can't do it.
So you actually can't open your airways in your nose because you haven't been opening your airways in your nose. So like you said, it's like that compounding negative effect where eventually you're just mouth breathing.
If you don't use it, you lose it.
Kind
of like lifting too. Like if your muscles are weak, and you got to start somewhere to build it back up.
Yeah, but again, it works in both directions. So you just start working back on it, then you can grow it.
Yeah.
Just like weightlifting is never too late. Your muscle can always get stronger than it was or than it is. So
one thing I've noticed in my classes, though, specifically, is that a lot of people take really short breaths. Like they're like, they don't really breathe fully, and which is unrealistic to breathe fully all day, every day.
Yeah.
But again, coming mindful to, we have our lungs. Like a lot of people think our lungs are just like up here, but it's actually all around us. It's down here on the sides, in our upper back. Like you can really fully breathe, and it feels so damn good too to just breathe. Oh my goodness. And that's one thing in yoga that is the anchor in every type of yoga, whether it's hot power or vinyasa or yin. The one thing in common is your breath, and that's always your anchor no matter what. So
I went to a few classes, and that was the one thing that I learned that I was able to carry into like my stretching outside was just like falling deeper into the stretch with your exhales and using your inhales to create more. Yeah,
create more space.
Yeah, that's it changed things for me. So definitely coming to a class would be beneficial. Not just coming to a class. How about making it a habit, huh?
For sure, making it a habit. That's one thing I love in my classes too, is just bringing the breath in and telling people, especially where to feel your breath, because like for example, we don't have lungs in our hips, but if you're doing a hip stretch or you're doing a forward fold or something, just imagine your breath going to those muscles somehow. Helps it in a way. It helps release that, especially with the exhale. You kind of get deeper into it.
Just breathing in, doing like a full belly breath instead of just a shallow chest breathing. Yeah. So I think breathing and bracing is something that's in weightlifting and powerlifting in general. So it talks about being able to, like, the goal is to be able to breathe into your diaphragm and belly breathe and lock your core. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with because they're so used to chest breathing all the time.
Yeah.
So
they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And a really good way to kind of practice that is just to use like your hands. So like we can actually do this right now if you want to too. So sitting up nice and straight, your spine is tall, and the crown of your head is reaching for the ceiling. So it's really important that your spine is straight here, because if you're kind of hunched, then you're going to breathe into where you're hunched. Okay. So that's the first thing to do is make sure
head
you're
up,
nice and long.
Back.
Yeah, shoulders down and back. And then we can kind of open up. And it's nice to bring your hands to your ribs because your chest is open as well. And just kind of notice your breath before we do anything. Notice where you feel it. So maybe you feel slightly like your ribs coming out. And then take a big breath in. And then a big breath out. So notice how you breathe in. There's this muscle that kind of goes up, pulling everything up, and then as you breathe out, the muscle goes down. So that's kind of the essence of bracing too, is to kind of, instead of just hunching over, breathing into your upper back or breathing shallowly into the chest, using your entire body here to breathe, like your entire core. Then we have a brace right here, so almost like what we were doing with our hands, bracing, it acts as the same purpose, so you can breathe against it and create that stability.
So the belt, side note, that's not to prevent lower back injuries. It's all about increasing your intra-abdominal pressure. So you have a stronger midsection, so you can lift some more weight. That's a common thing with belts. I hear people, you're gonna hurt your lower back. I'm like, if you're going to hurt your lower back, and the difference between you hurting your lower back and not hurting it is that belt, you should probably change your form and drop the weight a little bit. And just the belt's not the issue here.
The belt's not the issue here, guys.
Okay, so for people dealing with just a lot of life stress, what are some basic tips that you would give them to reduce their life stress or reduce their basically the symptoms of life stress?
So there's a lot of different things that you can do to manage stress, but the number one thing, which I think we've talked about this a lot today already, is just being mindful of it. So actually accepting it in the first place. A lot of people don't really want to accept it. They're like, you know what, I have a lot of stress, and then they'll just keep going. But actually just sit back and be like, whoa, I am stressed and it's making me feel like X, Y, and Z. So almost kind of like writing it out like a math equation, like I feel this way because of this. And a lot of times when we're stressed, we don't even notice that. So just really taking a moment to step back and notice how you're feeling, and then that'll kind of spark more interest. So it's like, okay, I'm stressed because of this in my life, or because of these things in my life. Then that gets the spark going. Okay, cool.
So just identifying it gives you the ability to take action on it versus sitting there spinning your wheels being upset.
And then a lot of people just go straight to the action part, like, okay, I'm just going to journal, or I'm just going to drink more water, which all of that is amazing and which people should do. But actually sitting there and being with that uncomfortability, like feeling it, and you're like, whoa, I don't like this. Like, I really want to change.
So I have one last point on the breathing, and its connection to like the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So could you speak like physiologically, like what kind of happens when we are stressed out and we actually implement breath work?
Yeah. So when we're stressed, our sympathetic nervous system takes place, which is your fight or flight.
Yeah.
And that is our survival mode. So automatically we shorten our breath, our heart rate gets much more higher, and we start to perspirate. And that just is a very stressful response for our body, that we can't properly digest food, we can't recover our muscles, we can't think properly either. So that's one thing too why we can't really perform when we're stressed, is because it affects our thought process. But so yeah, our breaths get really short and really fast paced, and we can't really breathe properly. And like how I'm talking like right now, I'm not breathing, and we're just exactly.
Going, right.
So when we actually force ourselves to take a step back and look at it, that's one thing that we can control, is our breath. So we can be like, okay, I can't control my heart rate right now, I can't control my thoughts, but I can control my breath. So taking a big breath in and then out, especially a long exhale. That alone helps lower the heart rate, starts to get us into that parasympathetic state, which is that rest and digest. So a lot of times people don't have control over the stressors, but you do have control over your breath.
And then just making that shift from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic allows you to kind of see through the rain a little bit, so you can make better decisions. And
the fog starts to go away.
Yeah.
And again, it's just from controlling your breath. And that's really all that you have to do, especially when you're in that panic state. The only thing you should focus on is just controlling your breath.
Yeah. That's important. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you being here today, Sabrina.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've talked about all kinds of stuff. So let's, could you give us some information on where to find you on Facebook, Patreon, YouTube?
Yeah, so Instagram, Sabrina Didado, Didado. And I am opening up a Patreon, Sabrina Didado Yogi, which I'll have links to that on my Instagram. And I'm also going to be doing a YouTube. I don't have it up yet, but stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Big things for you in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Physique podcast. If you enjoyed this and would like to hear more like it, be sure to subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram at Trevor W Training, on YouTube at Strategic Aesthetics, on Facebook, Trevor Woodyard, and you can also apply for coaching at strategicaesthetics.com.